Can a second chance fix a broken love? After an accident, James Carter forgets the last 10 years, including his wife, Elena. Now she has the chance to make him fall in love with her again. But what if, when his memories return, he becomes the man who once neglected her? Before we begin, comment below where you're watching from. Elena Carter stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 34, she still had the beauty that had once captivated her husband. Her dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her blue eyes, though tired, remained striking. But these days, James hardly noticed. She dabbed concealer under her eyes, covering the dark circles from another sleepless night. 7 years of marriage, and the last 3 had felt like living with a stranger. "Elena, have you seen my blue tie? The Armani one?" James called from the bedroom. Elena sighed and stepped out of the bathroom. "It's in the second drawer where it always is." James stood by the dresser, already dressed in an expensive suit. At 39, he was more handsome than ever, tall with salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished. He opened the drawer and pulled out the tie. "I have a board meeting at 9, then lunch with the Morgans and dinner with the Japanese investors," he said, his eyes never meeting hers as he fixed his tie in front of the mirror. "So I won't see you until late tonight," Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. "Don't wait up, it'll probably go past midnight." James grabbed his watch from the nightstand. Elena's heart sank. "James, tomorrow is our anniversary. 7 years. I thought maybe we could have breakfast together before I have an early meeting," he cut her off. "But I'll have flowers sent to you." Elena's throat tightened. "Flowers, like you do every year." James finally looked at her, his expression impatient. "What do you want from me, Elena? I'm keeping this family afloat. The Carter Industries don't run themselves." "I want my husband back," she whispered. "The one who used to look at me like I was the most important person in his world." James checked his watch. "We're not 20-somethings anymore. This is real life." He grabbed his briefcase. "I'll be late." Before Eleanor could respond, he was out the door. She heard his expensive car start up and pull away from their mansion. The house felt emptier than ever. Elena wandered to the kitchen where Maria, their housekeeper, was preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," Maria said with a warm smile. "Shall I make you some coffee?" "Please," Elena said, sitting at the island counter. "And please call me Elena. After 5 years, I think we can drop the formalities." Maria poured her a cup. "You look sad today, Mrs. Elena." Elena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Just tired, Maria. Just tired." "Mr. Carter is working too much," Maria said, placing a plate of fruit in front of her. "A man should not forget what matters most." Elena smiled weakly. "The irony is, he works so hard to give us this life, but he's never here to live it with." "Me?" The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Eleanor answered to hear her best friend Rachel's voice. "Hey, birthday girl, ready for lunch today?" Elena had completely forgotten. "Is that today? Don't tell me you forgot your own birthday. That's it, I'm definitely taking you out now." 1 o'clock at Bellini's. "I'll be there," Elena said, hanging. Up after breakfast, Elena spent the morning in her art studio. Painting had become her escape in recent years. Today she worked on a sunset over the ocean, trying to lose herself in the colors. At 12:30, she changed into a simple blue dress and drove herself to Bellini's. Rachel was already waiting, her red hair vibrant against her green dress. "There she is," Rachel exclaimed, embracing Eleanor. 34 looks good on you." They settled at their table, and Rachel didn't waste time. "So, how are things with Mr. Workaholic?" Eleanor sipped her water. "The same, he didn't even remember my birthday." Rachel's face darkened. "That man needs a wake-up call." "You're too good for him, Elena." "It wasn't always like this," Elena defended. "When we first met, James was passionate, attentive. He'd surprise me with weekend trips, leave love notes in my purse." "That was before he became CEO," Rachel pointed out. "Money changed him. Success changed him," Elena corrected. "And I've tried. Everything, romantic dinners, weekends away, even therapy. He either cancels or sits there checking his phone." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You deserve to be happy. Maybe it's time to consider..." Don't say it, Elena interrupted. I'm not giving up yet. After lunch, Elena decided to surprise James at his office. Maybe seeing her would remind him of her birthday. The Carter Industries building dominated the downtown skyline, all glass and steel. Elena parked and took the elevator to the top floor. James's secretary, Vanessa, looked surprised to see her. Mrs. Carter, I'm afraid your husband is in a meeting. I'll wait, Elena said, sitting in one of the plush chairs. 20 minutes later, the conference room doors opened. James emerged with several executives, including Sarah Davis, the attractive new marketing director. Elena couldn't help but notice how Sarah laughed at something James said, touching his arm lightly. James spotted Elena and froze momentarily before approaching her. Elena, is everything okay? Everything's fine, she said, forcing a smile. I thought we could have a late lunch. She saw the impatience flash across his face. I already ate, and I have calls all afternoon. Sarah approached them. Mr. Carter, we should finish our discussion about the Tokyo proposal. James nodded. Elena, this is Sarah Davis, our new marketing director. Sarah, my wife Elena. Sarah smiled. Lovely to meet you. Your husband speaks highly of you. Elena doubted that. Does he? An uncomfortable silence followed before James cleared his throat. I should get back to work. I'll see you at home. It's my birthday, Elena said quietly. James's expression changed to one of genuine regret. I'm sorry, I completely forgot. Let me make it up to you this weekend. Elena knew better than to believe him. Don't worry about it. I know how busy you are. She turned and walked to the elevator, refusing to let the tears fall until she was alone in her car. That evening, Elena sat alone at their large dining table. She'd dismissed Maria early, wanting privacy. A cake sat untouched in front of her. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. Stuck in dinner meeting. Don't wait up. Elena blew out the single candle she'd lit and made a wish that things would change. The next morning, she woke to an empty bed again. The clock read 7:30 a.m. Eleanor got up and prepared for another day alone. She was in the kitchen when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Carter Industries. Hello, Mrs. Carter. It was Vanessa, James's secretary. Her voice sounded strange. There's been an accident. Elena's heart stopped. What happened? Is James okay? He was driving to his morning meeting when a truck ran a red light. He's at City Memorial Hospital. They've taken him into surgery. The world seemed to blur around Eleanor. She grabbed her purse and keys, racing to her car. At the hospital, Eleanor ran to the reception desk. James Carter, my husband, was brought in from a car accident. The nurse directed her to the surgical waiting area where she found Vanessa and Robert Mason, James's right-hand man at the company. Eleanor, Robert said, his face grave. The doctors are with him now. It was bad. The truck hit his driver's side. Why didn't anybody call me sooner? Eleanor demanded. It just happened an hour ago, Vanessa explained. We called as soon as we heard. Elena sank into a chair, her legs unable to support her. I can't lose him, she whispered. Not like this. Hours passed in agonizing slowness. More Carter Industries executives arrived, including Sarah Davis, who sat across from Elena, looking genuinely concerned. Finally, a doctor in surgical scrubs approached. Mrs. Carter? Elena stood, her heart pounding. Yes. How is my husband? Your husband suffered severe injuries, including head trauma. We've managed to stabilize him, but he's in a coma. The next 48 hours will be critical. A coma, Elena repeated, her voice breaking. But he'll wake up, right? The doctor's expression was guarded. We're hopeful, but with head injuries, it's impossible to predict. You should prepare yourself. Even if he wakes up, there could be complications. What kind of complications? Robert asked. Memory loss, personality changes, cognitive issues. We won't know until he regains consciousness. Elena felt her world collapsing. Can I see him? The doctor nodded. He's being moved to the ICU. I'll have a nurse come get you. As the doctor left, Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Sarah. He's strong, Sarah said. If anyone can pull through this, it's James. Elena nodded numbly. She followed the nurse to the ICU, her steps heavy. Nothing could have prepared her for seeing James lying there, connected to machines, his face bruised and swollen. Eleanor sat beside him and took his hand. "James," she whispered, "it's me, I'm here." She brushed her fingers against his cheek. "You have to fight, please." Days passed in a blur of hospital rooms, concerned visitors, and medical updates. Elena barely left James's side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to his bed. On the 5th day, while Elena was reading a magazine aloud to James, she noticed his fingers moving. "James," she said, standing up, "can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. Eleanor hit the call button for the nurse. "James, it's me, Eleanor. You're in the hospital. There was an accident." James looked at her, confusion in his eyes. The doctor rushed in and began examining him. "Mr. Carter, I'm Dr. Bennett. You've been in a coma for 5 days following a car accident. Can you tell me what year it is?" James's voice was raspy from disuse. 2015. Eleanor and the doctor exchanged glances. "It was 2022. And who is this?" Dr. Bennett asked, gesturing to Eleanor. James studied her face. "I don't know." "A doctor?" Eleanor felt her heart breaking all over again. "James, it's me, Eleanor, your wife." James frowned. "Wife? I'm not married." Dr. Bennett gently moved Elena aside. "Mr. Carter needs rest. We'll run some tests and talk more later." In the hallway, Dr. Bennett explained to Eleanor, "Your husband appears to be suffering from retrograde amnesia. He's lost approximately 10 years of memories." "So he doesn't remember meeting me, our wedding, any of it?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaking. "It seems that way. Memory loss often affects personal memories more than factual knowledge. He may remember how to do his job, but not the people in his life." "Will he get his memories back?" The doctor hesitated. "Sometimes memories return gradually. Other times, they never fully come back. The brain is still largely a mystery to us." "What should I do?" Elena asked, feeling lost. "For now, don't pressure him. Introduce yourself as his wife, but let him process that information. Familiar surroundings might help trigger memories, so once he's stable enough to go home, that could be beneficial." Elena nodded, trying to process everything. "So I just start over with him?" "In a way, yes," Dr. Bennett said kindly. "Think of it as a chance to reintroduce yourself." As Elena walked back toward James's room, a strange thought occurred to her. For years, she had wished for the return of the man she fell in love with, the James who looked at her with love instead of distraction. Now fate had given her a clean slate. When she re-entered the room, James was awake, staring out the window. "I'm sorry," he said when he saw her. "They tell me you're my wife, but I don't remember you." Elena sat down beside him. "That's okay. The doctor says you've lost about 10 years of memories." 10 years? James looked shocked. "So, we've been married. How long?" 7 years, Elena said. "We met at an art gallery opening. I was showcasing my paintings." James studied her face. "You're an artist," Elena nodded, "though lately it's been more of a hobby." "You're beautiful," James said suddenly. "I can see why I married you." Elena felt her cheeks flush. When was the last time James had complimented her like that? "Tell me about us," James requested. "Were we happy?" The question caught Elena off guard. She could tell him the truth, that they had been growing apart for years, that he had become a workaholic who barely noticed her, or she could focus on the good times. Before she could decide, James winced in pain. "Should I call the nurse?" Eleanor asked, concerned. "No, it'll pass." He took a deep breath. "So, do we have children?" Another painful question. "No, we wanted to focus on our careers first." The truth was more complicated. They had been trying for 2 years without success, and then James had become so consumed with work that the subject had been dropped. "I see." James looked thoughtful. "What kind of husband was I? A good one, I hope." Elena looked into his eyes that now held genuine interest in her answer. "How long had it been since James had looked at her that way? You were..." Elena paused, making a decision. "You are a good man, James. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but we love each other." James smiled, and Elena saw a glimpse of the man she had fallen in love with. Well, at least I had good taste in women. For the first time in years, Elena felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this tragedy was also an opportunity, a chance to rebuild what they had lost. As she sat by his bedside, holding his hand, Elena made a silent promise. This time she wouldn't let work or success or anything else come between them. This time she would fight for their love. What she didn't say out loud, what she barely admitted to herself, was the question lurking in her heart. When James eventually remembered their life together, would he go back to being the cold, distant man he had become? Or was this their second chance at happiness? Only time would tell. 2 weeks after the accident, Dr. Bennett cleared James to go home. Elena had spent the days preparing their mansion, removing anything that might overwhelm him and arranging photos from their years together in hopes they might trigger his memory. "Is this really where we live?" James asked as they pulled through the gates of their estate. Elena nodded. "For the past 5 years. Before that we had an apartment downtown," James whistled. "I must be doing well at Carter Industries." "You're the CEO," Elena said. "You took over when your father retired." "Dad stepped down?" James looked surprised. "Last I remember, he was saying he'd never leave." Elena parked in front of the house. "He had a mild heart attack 4 years ago. The doctors advised him to reduce stress." James stared at the mansion. "And me? What kind of CEO am I?" Elena hesitated. "A successful one. The company has tripled in value under your leadership." "At what cost?" James asked, his eyes finding hers. The question caught Elena off guard. Old James would never have asked that. "Let's get you settled in," she said, avoiding his question. "You must be tired." Maria met them at the door, wiping tears from her eyes when she saw James. "Mr. Carter, thank God you're home. The house hasn't been the same without you." James looked at Elena questioningly. "This is Maria, our housekeeper," Elena explained. "Nice to meet you, Maria," James said politely, clearly not remembering her. Maria's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I've prepared your favorite lunch, grilled salmon with lemon butter sauce." "That sounds wonderful," James said, "though I don't remember if that's my favorite or not." Helena showed him around the house, watching his face for any sign of recognition. In their bedroom, James stopped at the wedding photo on the dresser. "We look happy," he said, picking up the frame. "We were," Elena said softly. James set the photo down and examined the room. "Do I sleep on the left or right side?" "Right," Elena answered. "I've prepared the guest room for me. I thought you might want space while you recover." James looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. This is your bedroom too." "The doctor said not to rush anything," Elena said. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." James nodded. "I appreciate that, but it feels wrong to kick you out of your own room." After lunch, Elena showed James his home office. He ran his fingers over the awards and diplomas on the wall. "Harvard Business School," he read. "At least I remember that part." Elena pointed to a photo of James shaking hands with the governor. "This was taken last year when you received the Businessman of the Year award." James studied the photo. "I look serious." "You were," Elena said without thinking. James caught her tone. "Was I that bad?" Elena busied herself straightening items on his desk. "You were focused on your work." "Elena," James said gently, "I need to know what kind of man I was. What kind of husband?" Elena finally looked at him. "You were driven, ambitious. The company became your priority." "And us?" James pressed. "What happened to us?" Elena couldn't lie to him. "We grew apart. You worked 16-hour days, traveled constantly. Some weeks I barely saw you." James's face fell. "I'm sorry." The simple apology, so genuine and immediate, brought tears to Elena's eyes. The old James would have defended his choices, explained why the company needed him. "It's not your fault," she said. "We both let it happen." That evening they ate dinner on the patio, watching the sunset over their manicured garden. James asked Elena about her art, how they met, their wedding day, all the details he couldn't remember. "Tell me about our first date," he requested as they finished their meal. Elena smiled at the memory. "You took me to a small Italian restaurant. You were so nervous you knocked over your wine glass." "I did not," James said, laughing. "You did. All over my white dress. You were horrified, but I thought it was endearing." You gave me your jacket to cover the stain. James shook his head. I can't believe I don't remember that. You also can't. Remember how you proposed in the middle of Central Park during a snowstorm? Elena said. You were supposed to do it at dinner, but you said you couldn't wait another minute. James reached across the table and took her hand. I sound like I was crazy about you. You were, Elena said softly. We both were. Later that night, as Elena prepared for bed in the guest room, there was a knock at the door. Come in, she called. James entered, looking uncertain. I just wanted to say good night. Good night, Elena said. If you need anything, I'm right here. James lingered in the doorway. Thank you for today, for being patient with me. Elena nodded. Of course. Can I ask you something? Why did you stay, if I was such a workaholic husband? The question hung in the air between them. Because I kept hoping the man I married would come back, Elena admitted. The one who said I was more important than any business deal. James's expression softened. I'd like to know that man too. After he left, Elena lay awake for hours, her mind racing. For the first time in years, she felt a connection to James again, not the distant CEO, but the man she'd fallen in love with. It was as though the universe had granted her wish in the cruelest way possible. The next morning, Robert Mason and several other executives came to visit James. Eleanor showed them to the living room, where James greeted them with a handshake. James, good to see you up and about, Robert said. How's the recovery going? Still missing a decade, James said lightly, but otherwise improving. We're all eager to have you back at the office, Sarah Davis said, stepping forward with a warm smile. Elena noticed how Sarah's hand lingered on James's arm. When the doctors clear you, of course. I'm afraid I won't be much use right now, James said. I barely remember the company structure from 10 years ago, let alone now. Robert looked concerned. The Tokyo deal is approaching its deadline. We need your decision on whether to proceed. James glanced at Elena, clearly uncomfortable. I think it's best if you handle these matters for now, Robert. I trust your judgment. The executives exchanged worried looks. This was not the decisive, controlling CEO they knew. Maybe we should discuss this privately, Robert suggested, glancing at Eleanor. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my wife, James said firmly. Elena couldn't hide her surprise. The old James would have immediately asked her to leave for a business discussion. After the executives left, promising to provide James with company reports to review, Elena brought him tea on the patio. You didn't have to include me back there, she said. James sipped his tea. Did I usually exclude you from business matters? Always, Eleanor admitted. You said you didn't want to burden me with work problems. James frowned. That doesn't sound like protecting you. It sounds like shutting you out. Eleanor sat beside him. You're different now, less guarded. Maybe amnesia has its benefits, James joked. Then more seriously, that Sarah woman, is she just a colleague? Eleanor stiffened. She's your marketing director. You hired her 6 months ago. She seems very friendly. Elena had wondered the same thing many times, watching Sarah's interactions with James at company events. You worked closely with her on the Asian expansion, Elena said carefully. James watched her face. Were you worried about her? About us? Elena looked away. You were always committed to our marriage, but you spent more time with her than with me in recent months. James took her hand. Elena, I may not remember our past, but I'm not interested in anyone but you. Elena's heart raced at his touch. When was the last time James had looked at her this way, with such undivided attention? You should rest, she said, pulling her hand away gently. Doctor's orders. As days turned into weeks, a new routine developed. James spent mornings reviewing company documents, trying to relearn the business he had built. Afternoons were for physical therapy to address lingering injuries from the accident. Evenings belonged to Elena. They watched movies James couldn't remember seeing, played board games, and talked for hours on the patio. Elena found herself falling, in love with him all over again, with this version of James who listened when she spoke, who asked about her day, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. One evening, James asked to see her artwork. Elena led him to her studio, suddenly nervous. The old James had stopped visiting her studio years ago. "These are incredible," James said, studying a painting of a stormy seascape. "You're really talented, Elena." "Thank you," she said, watching his face. James moved to another canvas, a half-finished portrait of him. "When did you start this?" "About a year ago," Elena admitted. "I never finished it." "Why not?" Elena touched the canvas gently. "You were too busy for sittings, and I couldn't quite capture you anymore." James examined the portrait closely. "You painted me looking so serious." "That's how you were," Elena said. "Would you paint me again?" James asked. "The me I am now?" Elena's heart swelled. "I'd love to." Next day, while James was napping, Rachel came to visit. They sat in the kitchen as Maria prepared lunch. "So," Rachel said, leaning forward eagerly, "how's life with amnesia, James?" Eleanor couldn't help smiling. "Wonderful and terrifying at the same time. He's so different, Rachel. Attentive, present. He actually asks about my day and listens to the answer." "Sounds like the man you married," Rachel observed. "Exactly like him," Elena agreed. "It's like getting a second chance." Rachel's expression turned serious. "But what happens when his memory returns? Will he go back to being workaholic James?" The question had been haunting Elena. "I don't know. The doctors say some memories might never return, but others could come back any time. And you still haven't told him how bad things really were." Elena shook her head. "I've been honest about growing apart, but I haven't told him about the missed anniversaries, the lonely holidays, the night I found him sleeping in his office because he'd forgotten we had dinner plans." "You need to be careful, Eleanor," Rachel warned. "You're falling for him again, but this might be temporary." "What am I supposed to do? Push him away?" "No," Rachel said. "Just protect your heart and be prepared for the possibility that the old James might return." After Rachel left, Eleanor found James in the garden, reading company reports. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking," Eleanor said, sitting beside him. James set the papers aside. "About what?" "About us. About how this feels like a fresh start." James took her hand. "It does for me too. I know this isn't fair to you, having a husband who doesn't remember your history together. Sometimes that might be a blessing," Elena said softly. "Eleanor," James said, his expression serious, "even without my memories, I can see that I wasn't the husband you deserved. The more I learn about the man I became, the less I like him." Eleanor felt tears forming. "You were just ambitious, successful." "At the expense of us," James said. "That's not success, that's failure." He reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. The tender gesture broke something inside Elena. When James leaned forward and kissed her gently, she felt herself responding, with all the longing she'd suppressed for years. When they pulled apart, James was looking at her with wonder. "I may not remember falling in love with you the first time, but I'm definitely falling for you now." Elena felt dizzy with emotion. "James, I know this is complicated," he said, "but I want to make things right between us. I want us to have a real marriage again." 3 days later, James suggested they go out for dinner. A proper date, he called it. Eleanor wore a red dress she knew he had always liked, and her heart fluttered when his eyes widened appreciatively. At the restaurant, the same Italian place where they'd had their first date, James seemed nervous. "What's wrong?" Elena asked as they waited for their food. "I have a confession," James said. "I asked Robert to brief me on all the important company matters today. I'm going to visit the office tomorrow." Elena felt a chill. You sure you're ready?" "I need to start somewhere," James said. "I can't hide at home forever." "You're not hiding, you're recovering." James reached across the table. "Just for a few hours. I want to see if anything feels familiar." Elena nodded, trying to hide her fear. Would the office trigger his old habits? Would the James she was falling in love with again disappear once he stepped back into the CEO role? "I'd like you to come with me," James added. "If you're comfortable with that." Elena looked up in surprise. "To your office?" "Yes. You said I never included you in that part of my life before. I'd like to change that." The next morning, Eleanor accompanied James to Carter Industries. The employees stared as they walked through the building hand in hand, something the old James would never have done. Vanessa nearly dropped her coffee when she saw them. "Mr. Carter, we weren't expecting you today. Just a short visit, Vanessa," James said. "I'm still on medical leave." Robert Mason emerged from James's office, clearly surprised. "James, Eleanor, this is unexpected." "Just showing my wife around," James said casually. "I understand I didn't do that before." Robert's eyes flicked to Elena. "Well, you were always very focused on work." They toured the executive floor, with Robert pointing out changes made in recent years. In the conference room, they encountered Sarah Davis reviewing marketing materials. "James," she exclaimed, standing quickly. "What a wonderful surprise." She moved to hug him, but James stepped back slightly, keeping his hand firmly on Elena's waist. "Sarah," he acknowledged politely. "Hard at work on the Tokyo campaign?" "Always," Sarah said, her smile faltering as she glanced at Elena. "We miss your leadership here." "Robert is doing an excellent job," James said, "and I'm enjoying my time at home with my wife." Eleanor watched Sarah's expression shift at the emphasis James placed on wife. Had there been something between them after all? In James's office, Eleanor noticed how impersonal the space was. No photos, no personal touches, just awards and business books. "This doesn't feel like me," James commented, looking around. "It was definitely you," Robert said. "You spent more time here than anywhere else." James sat in his chair, running his hands over the desk. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, a flash of recognition that made Elena's stomach tighten. "The quarterly reports," James said suddenly. "We always review them the first Monday of the month." Robert looked excited. "Yes, that's right. Are you remembering?" James frowned, concentrating. "Something about the Wilson account. There was a problem with their shipments." "That was 2 months ago," Robert confirmed. "Your memory is coming back." Eleanor felt a mix of emotions, hope for James's recovery but fear of what it might mean for them. On the drive home, James was quiet, lost in thought. "Are you okay?" Eleanor asked. "It was strange," James admitted. Being in that office felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. "Like watching a movie about someone else's life, except it's supposed to be mine. Did you remember anything else?" James shook his head. "Just fragments, nothing substantial." He turned to her. "But I did realize something important." "What's that?" "I don't want to be that man anymore, the one who valued work over his wife. Whether my memories return or not, I want us to have a better future." That night, standing in the doorway of the guest room, James looked at Elena with determination. "I think we've been patient long enough," he said. "I'd like my wife back in our bedroom." Elena felt her heart race. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that I'm falling in love with you all over again," James said, stepping closer. "And I think you feel it too." Before Eleanor could respond, James's phone rang. He checked the screen. "It's Robert. I should take this." Eleanor nodded, watching. As James answered the call and walked down the hallway, the conversation seemed intense, with James pacing as he listened to Robert. When he returned, his expression had changed. "There's a problem with the Tokyo deal. The Japanese investors are threatening to pull out." "What does Robert want you to do?" Elena asked, already knowing the answer. "He wants me to fly to Tokyo tomorrow," James said. "He says only I can salvage the relationship." Elena felt her stomach drop. This was exactly how it had started before. One emergency, one important meeting, one crisis that only James could handle. "I told him I need to think about it," James continued. "I wanted to talk to you first." The old James would have immediately agreed to. Go would have already been packing his bags. "What do you want to do?" Eleanor asked carefully. James looked torn. "Part of me feels responsible. This deal apparently took months to negotiate, but another part of me doesn't want to slip back into old patterns." He took her hands in his. "What do you think I should do?" Eleanor was stunned by the question. James had never asked for her input on business matters before. "I think," she began slowly, "I think you need to decide what kind of man you want to be now. Not who you were then." James nodded, considering her words. "Would you come with me? To Tokyo?" The request was so unexpected that Elena couldn't speak for a moment. "We could make it part business, part pleasure," James continued. "I'll handle the meetings and we can explore the city together in between. You never asked me to travel with you before, Elena said softly. Then I was an idiot, James replied. Will you come? As Elena looked into his hopeful eyes, she realized she was standing at a crossroads. This was their chance to rewrite their story, but a nagging fear remained. What would happen when all of James's memories returned? Would this new beginning fade like a beautiful dream? Yes, she said finally. I'll come with you. James pulled her into an embrace, holding her as if he'd never let go. Thank you for giving us a second chance, he whispered against her hair. Elena closed her eyes, savoring the moment, but unable to silence the voice in her head, warning her that second chances sometimes come with a price. The man she had fallen in love with was back, but for how long? Only time would tell. Tokyo was everything Elena had imagined, a dazzling blend of ancient traditions and futuristic technology. From their hotel suite high above the city, the lights below created a sea of colors that stretched to the horizon. It's beautiful, Elena said, gazing out the window as James unpacked his suitcase. Not as beautiful as you, he replied, coming to stand beside her. Elena leaned against him, savoring his warmth. Are you nervous about tomorrow's meeting? A little, James admitted. I've been studying the file Robert prepared, but I still feel like I'm walking into this blind. You'll do fine, Elena assured him. Robert says you always had good instincts for business. James turned to face her. Thank you for coming with me. I don't think I could do this alone. The next morning, Elena helped James select his suit and tie. As she adjusted his collar, the intimacy of the moment struck her. This simple act of helping her husband dress for work, something that would have been unthinkable in their old life, now felt natural and warm. How do I look? James asked. CEO enough? Perfect, Elena said. Confident but approachable. James took a deep breath. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, Elena told him. Just be yourself. The new yourself. While James attended his meeting, Elena explored the hotel's art gallery. She was studying a delicate watercolor when her phone buzzed with a text from James. Meeting going well, miss you. Dinner tonight at Sakura Garden. Wear something nice. Elena smiled at the message. The old James would have simply told her where they were eating if he bothered to inform her at all. That evening, Elena wore a black dress with a pearl necklace James had given her years ago. When he saw her, his eyes widened appreciatively. You are the most beautiful woman in Tokyo tonight, he said, kissing her cheek. The restaurant was exquisite, with private dining rooms overlooking a traditional Japanese garden. Their table was beside a window where moonlight illuminated cherry blossoms. How did the meeting go? Elena asked after they ordered. Better than expected, James said. The investors were concerned about some changes to the original plan. I promised to review everything personally and address their concerns, so that's wonderful. James reached across the table and took her hand. I have a confession to make, though. During the meeting I had flashes, memories of previous negotiations, faces I should know. Elena's heart skipped a beat. Your memory is coming back? Fragments, James said. Nothing complete, but it helped me in there. He paused. I also remembered something about us. Elena tensed. What was it? Our honeymoon, James said softly. We were on a beach. You were wearing a white sundress, and I was taking your picture as the sun set. Tears sprang to Elena's eyes. Fiji, our second day there. You looked so happy, James continued, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Elena squeezed his hand. You remember that? It's the first clear memory I've had of us, James said. I'm hoping there will be more. Elena's emotions were mixed. She was happy that James was remembering their happy times, but anxious about what else might return. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of business and pleasure. James attended meetings in the mornings while Elena explored the city. They spent afternoons together visiting temples, gardens, and markets. Each evening, they discovered a different restaurant, talking for hours over exotic dishes. It was the honeymoon they had never really had. Their actual honeymoon had been cut short when James received an urgent call about a business crisis. On their last night in Tokyo, James surprised Elena with a private boat tour of the harbor. As they gazed at the illuminated skyline, James wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being patient with me. For giving me a second chance to be the husband you deserve." Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. "It's like we're starting over." James kissed her deeply, and Eleanor felt herself responding with all the love and desire she'd suppressed for so long. Later, in their hotel suite, they made love for the first time since the accident, tenderly at first, then with increasing passion, rediscovering each other all over again. Afterward, as Elena lay in his arms, she couldn't remember the last time she had felt so complete, so cherished. "I love you," James whispered against her hair. "I may not remember every moment of our past, but I know that's true." Elena's heart swelled. "I love you too, I never stopped." The next morning, as they prepared to check out of the hotel, James received a call from Robert. "The investors signed," he told Elena after hanging up. "The Tokyo deal is secure." "That's wonderful," Elena said. "Your first victory as the new James Carter." James grinned. "Let's celebrate. What do you say we extend our trip? We could fly to Bali for a week before heading home." Elena was stunned. "What about the company?" "Robert has things under control," James said. "And I've realized something important on this trip. The company matters, but you matter more. I want us to have time together. Real time, not just snatched moments between business meetings." It was everything Elena had longed to hear for years. "Yes," she said, "let's go to Bali." Their week in Bali was like a dream. White sand beaches, clear blue water, and days filled with nothing but each other. They snorkeled, hiked to waterfalls, and spent long evenings on their private villa's porch, talking about everything and nothing. One night, as they walked along the beach under the stars, James asked about their attempts to have children. "Robert mentioned that we'd been trying before the accident," he said. "Why didn't it happen for us?" Elena looked out at the ocean. "The doctor said there was nothing physically wrong with either of us. Just stress, perhaps. You were working so much and we weren't. Intimate as often as we once were." James pulled her close. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Eleanor said. "We both got caught up in other things." "Do you still want children?" James asked. The question caught Elena by surprise. "Do you?" "I think I'd like to be a father," James said. "Especially now with this second chance we have. I think we'd make wonderful parents." Eleanor felt tears in her eyes. "I'd like that too." By the time they returned home, Eleanor felt like she was living in a beautiful dream. The James who had returned with her was attentive, loving, and placed their marriage above everything else. It was everything she had wished for, but reality was waiting for them. The day after their return, James insisted on going to the office. "Just for a few hours," he promised Elena. "I need to follow up on the Tokyo success." Elena tried to ignore her unease. "Of course, I have some errands to run anyway." When James hadn't returned by dinner, Tayatum Elena felt the first twinge of real worry. She texted him, "Everything okay?" His reply came 20 minutes later. "Sorry, got caught up in meetings. Be home in an hour." 2 hours later, James finally arrived, looking tired but excited. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing Elena quickly. "The board called an emergency meeting about the Asian expansion. Things are moving faster than expected." Elena tried to hide her disappointment. "How was your day otherwise?" "Good," James said, loosening his tie. "Familiar in a way. Sarah walked me through the marketing strategy, and I actually remembered some of our previous discussions." "Sarah?" Elena couldn't keep the edge from her voice. James looked at her. "Yes, the marketing director. Is something wrong?" Eleanor hesitated. "No, nothing. I'm glad you're remembering things." "Me too," James said, not noticing her discomfort. "It feels like pieces are starting to fit together." Over the next week, James spent more time at the office each day. He always apologized for being late, always had a good reason. But Elena couldn't help feeling that history was repeating itself. One evening, when James called to say he would miss dinner again, Elena decided to surprise him at the office. She picked up food from his favorite restaurant and headed downtown. The Carter Industries building was quiet, most employees having left for the day. Elena took the elevator to the executive floor, food containers in hand. As she approached James's office, she heard laughter, his and a woman's. Through the partially open door, she could see James sitting on the edge of his desk. Sarah stood close to him, her hand on his arm as they looked at something on a tablet. "You're remembering more every day," Sarah was saying. "Soon you'll be back to your old self." "Maybe not entirely," James replied. "Some changes might be for the better." Sarah stepped closer. "I've missed working with you like this, the way we used to brainstorm late into the night." Elena's stomach knotted. She was about to interrupt when Sarah continued. "Those weeks before your accident, I felt like we had such a connection," Sarah said, her voice lower. "You understood me like no one else." James looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, I know you felt it too," Sarah pressed. "You told me how unhappy you were at home, how Elena didn't understand your ambition." Elena felt like she'd been punched. Had James really said those things? "I think you've misunderstood," James said, stepping back from Sarah. "Whatever I might have said or done before the accident, things are different now. I love my wife." Sarah's expression hardened. "You don't even remember what we had." "I remember enough," James said firmly. "And I know that I want to make my marriage work." Elena backed away from the door, her heart racing. She hurried to the elevator, leaving the food forgotten on a side table. At home, she paced the living room, trying to process what she'd heard. Had James been having an affair with Sarah, or was Sarah exaggerating a professional relationship? When James arrived home an hour later, Elena was sitting in the dark living room. "Elena," he called, turning on the light. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "I brought you dinner at the office," she said quietly. James's expression changed as he realized what she meant. "You heard my conversation with Sarah." "Some of it," Elena admitted. "Enough to wonder what was really going on between you two before the accident." James sat beside her on the couch. "Elena, Don't lie to me," she interrupted. "Please, were you having an affair with her?" James looked troubled. "I don't think so. I don't remember everything, but I don't feel that way about her." "But you told her you were unhappy with me." James took her hands. "I don't remember saying that, but if I did, I was a fool. The man I was before, from everything I've learned, made a lot of mistakes. Putting work before you was clearly one of them." "How do I know this isn't just temporary?" Elena asked, tears in her eyes. "What happens when all your memories come back? Will you go back to being that man?" "I won't," James promised, "because even if my memories return completely, I'll have these new ones too. Of Tokyo, of Bali, of rediscovering how much I love you." Elena wanted desperately to believe him. "I'm scared, James. I'm falling in love with you all over again, but I'm terrified of losing you to your old self." James held her close. "You won't lose me, I promise." But even as she rested in his arms, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their perfect reunion was beginning to fracture. The next morning, Dr. Bennett called with James's latest test results. "The healing is progressing well," he told them. "The neural pathways that were damaged are rebuilding themselves." "Does that mean I'll get all my memories back?" James asked. "It's likely you'll recover most of them," Dr. Bennett said. "Sometimes trauma like yours creates a reset of sorts, allowing patients to retain their core personality, but with subtle changes to emotional responses and priorities." After the call, James seemed pensive. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked. "If I get all my memories back," he said, "will I lose what we've built these past weeks? Will I become that workaholic again?" Elena touched his face gently. "The doctor said your core personality remains. I believe the man I've fallen in love with again is the real you. The one who was always there, beneath the ambition and stress." James kissed her hand. "I hope you're right." That afternoon, Eleanor received a call from Rachel asking to meet for coffee. At the cafe, Rachel seemed unusually serious. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. Rachel hesitated. "I overheard something at work yesterday. I'm not sure if I should tell you." Elena's stomach tightened. Rachel worked at a law firm that sometimes handled cases for Carter Industries. "Tell me," Elena insisted. "One of our partners was talking about Carter Industries," Rachel said. "Apparently, before the accident, James was considering a merger that would have required relocating to Singapore for at least 2 years." "Singapore?" Elena was stunned. "He never mentioned that to me." The partner said James had been discussing it with the board, but wanted to wait until after your anniversary to tell you. Rachel looked uncomfortable. Eleanor, I think he was planning to go whether you agreed or not. Eleanor felt sick. Why wouldn't he discuss something that important with me? Maybe he knew you wouldn't want to leave your life here, Rachel suggested gently. Your art studio, your friends. So he was just going to present it as a fait accompli? Elena's voice rose. That's not a partnership, that's dictatorship. Rachel reached across the table. This is what I was afraid of, that as his memory returns, the old James might resurface, the one who made decisions without you. Elena drove home in a daze. The Singapore revelation felt like a betrayal, even though it had happened before the accident. It showed how far apart they had grown, that James could contemplate such a massive life change without involving her. When she arrived home, James was in his study reviewing company documents. He looked up with a smile that faded when he saw her expression. What's wrong? He asked. Were you planning to move us to Singapore? Elena asked directly. James looked startled. Singapore? I don't know. Why are you asking? Rachel heard that before your accident, you were working on a merger that would require relocating there for 2 years. You never mentioned it to me. James frowned, concentrating. I remember discussions about expanding into Asia, but not specifically about moving there. Would you have told me, or just announced it once everything was arranged? Elena, I don't remember, James said, frustration evident in his voice. I can't defend decisions I don't recall making. But that's the problem, Elena said, tears threatening. The man I've fallen back in love with these past weeks might disappear any day. The old James could return, the one who kept secrets and put the company first. James stood and came around the desk. I'm still me. Memory or no memory. I love you. That hasn't changed. But it might, Elena whispered, when you remember everything. James took her hands. Listen to me. Even if every memory returns, I won't forget these weeks with you. I won't forget falling in love with you again. That's real, Elena. More real than any business deal or merger. Elena wanted desperately to believe him, but doubt had taken root, feeding on her fears and insecurities. That night they lay in bed not touching, an invisible wall between them for the first time since the accident. The next morning, Elena was awakened by James shouting in his sleep. She shook him gently. James, wake up. You're having a nightmare. He sat up abruptly, his eyes wild, sweat beading on his forehead. The car, he gasped. I saw the truck coming. I couldn't avoid it. Elena held him. It's okay. It was just a dream. No, James said, his breathing still rapid. It was a memory. I remember the accident now. I was driving to the office thinking about the quarterly reports, and then he broke off, shuddering. It's coming back, he whispered. My memory. Elena felt a chill. All of it? Pieces, James said, but more clear than before. That day, more memories returned in a flood. James remembered his father's heart attack, the day he became CEO, business trips and board meetings. He called Robert with insights about company matters that had been lost to him for weeks. Elena watched with growing anxiety as James became more animated, talking about work, his eyes lighting up as he remembered successful deals and strategies. That evening, Sarah called to discuss an urgent matter. Elena listened as James talked with her, his tone professional but engaged. He was slipping back into his CEO role so easily. After the call, James noticed Elena's expression. What's wrong? Nothing, she lied. It's good that you're remembering. Things? James studied her face. You're afraid I'm becoming him again, the workaholic who neglected you. Elena couldn't deny it. It's happening so fast. 1 minute you're the man who whisked me away to Bali, and the next you're deep in business. Discussions with Sarah. Eleanor, just because I'm remembering my work doesn't mean I'm forgetting us, James said. What we've rebuilt is too important to me. I want to believe that, Eleanor said, but I'm scared. James embraced her. Don't be. Nothing is more important to me than you. The next day, Eleanor was painting in her studio when she heard voices in the foyer, James and Robert. They moved to James's study, and Elena tried to focus on her canvas, but curiosity got the better of her. She moved closer to the study door, which was slightly ajar. "The Singapore option is still on the table," Robert was saying, "but we need to decide by Friday." 2 years is a long commitment, James replied. "I need to discuss it with Elena." "The old you was ready to move forward," Robert said. "You had already started the paperwork. The old me made a lot of decisions I wouldn't make now," James said firmly. "James," Robert's voice lowered, "the board is watching how you handle this. Some members are concerned about your changed priorities since the accident." "My priorities are exactly where they should be," James said. "My wife comes first. If the board has a problem with that, they can find another CEO." Eleanor backed away from the door, her heart racing. James was standing up for their marriage, putting her before the company. It was everything she had hoped for, but feared wouldn't last. Later that afternoon, James found her in the garden. "We need to talk about Singapore," he said, sitting beside her on the bench. Elena nodded. "I heard you and Robert discussing it." "I'm sorry," James said. "I should have told you as soon as I remembered the deal. Would you have taken it before the accident?" James was quiet for a moment. "I think I would have, and I would have expected you to follow me without question." The honesty stung, but Eleanor appreciated it. "And now?" "Now," James said, taking her hand, "I wouldn't dream of making such a decision without you. If you don't want to go, we don't go. It's that simple." "What about the board?" Robert said they're concerned. James shrugged. "Let them be. I'm a better CEO now because I understand what really matters. Success isn't just about the bottom line. It's about balance." Elena studied his face. "You really mean that?" "With all my heart," James said. "These past weeks have taught me what I was risking with my workaholic behavior. I was building an empire while my marriage crumbled. I won't make that mistake again." Elena leaned against him, hope blooming in her chest. Maybe this new James, this blend of the man she married and the man she'd rediscovered, would be stronger than the old one. But their peace was short-lived. That evening, as they prepared for bed, James suddenly gasped and pressed his hands to his temples. "James," Elena said, alarmed, "what's wrong?" "My head," he groaned. "It's like a flood of images, memories." He sank onto the bed, his face contorted in pain. Eleanor reached for the phone to call Dr. Bennett, but James stopped her. "Wait," he said. "It's passing." "But Elena..." He looked up at her, his eyes different somehow, harder, more focused. "I remember everything now." Elena's heart stopped. "Everything?" James nodded slowly. "The accident, our marriage, the company, all of it." "James," Eleanor said, her voice trembling, "do you remember us? How we were before?" "Yes," he said quietly. "I remember how I neglected you, how I put work before our marriage." Elena sat beside him, afraid to speak, afraid this was the moment. She would lose him again, when the full weight of his old identity would crush the new man she had come to love. James took her hands, his gaze intense. "I remember the night before the accident. We argued because I forgot your birthday. You looked so hurt, so resigned, like you'd given up on me." Elena nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I was losing hope. I remember driving to work the next morning, thinking about what you'd said, that you wanted your husband back. I was actually considering cutting back my hours trying to fix things between us." James's voice caught. "And then the truck hit me, and I lost you in a different way." "You were going to try?" Elena asked, surprised. "Yes," James admitted, "but I probably wouldn't have followed through. I was too caught up in the company's success to see what really mattered." He touched her face gently. "The accident was terrible, but it gave us something precious, a second chance. I got to fall in love with you all over again without the distractions and ambitions that had blinded me before." "And now," Elena whispered, "now that you remember everything, who are you going to be?" James looked into her eyes with absolute certainty. "The man who deserves you, the man who knows that no business success is worth losing you, the man who wants to build a family with you more than he wants to build an empire." Eleanor searched his face for any sign of the cold, distant husband she had lived with for years. Instead, she saw only warmth, love, and sincerity. "I believe you," she said finally, "but I'm still scared. Old habits are hard to break. Then we'll break them together, James promised. Starting with Singapore. What about it? I'm turning. Tie it down, James said decisively. Robert can handle the expansion from here. I'm staying right where I belong with you. Eleanor felt tears of relief and joy spill down her cheeks. I love you, James. I never stopped, even when things were at their worst. I love you too, James said, pulling her close. And I swear to... You, Elena, you will never again have to wonder if you matter to me, because you are everything. As they held each other, Eleanor finally allowed herself to believe that their second chance wasn't temporary, that the accident hadn't just restored James's health, but had healed their marriage in ways she had never thought possible. Yet even as hope filled her heart, a shadow of doubt remained. James's memories had returned completely now. Would his promises hold in the face of business pressures and old temptations, or was this merely the calm before another storm? Only time would tell if the man who held her now, the one who put their marriage first, was truly here to stay. 3 months had passed since James regained his full memory. Spring had arrived, bringing cherry blossoms to the garden where Elena sat sketching. From her bench, she could see through the window into James's home office, where he was on a video call. Even from a distance, she could see the animation in his face as he discussed business matters. So much had changed, yet Eleanor still found herself holding her breath sometimes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Would today be the day the old James returned? Would he start coming home late again, his mind still at the office even when his body was home? So far, her fears hadn't materialized. James had been true to his word. He had turned down the Singapore project, restructured his work schedule to be home by 6 most evenings, and even started taking weekends completely off, something the old James would never have done. Elena put down her sketchbook when she saw James end his call and waved to her through the window. A moment later, he joined her in the garden. "How's your morning been?" he asked, kissing her cheek before sitting beside her. "Peaceful," Elena said. "I'm working on designs for the children's hospital mural." James looked at her sketch. "It's beautiful. Those kids are going to love it." Elena had volunteered to paint a mural for the pediatric ward where James had spent time during his recovery. It felt right to give back to the place that had, in a roundabout way, given them a second chance. "How was your call?" Eleanor asked. "Productive. The European expansion is on track." James squeezed her hand. "But that's enough work talk. Don't forget we have dinner with your parents tonight." "How could I forget? My mother has called twice to confirm." James laughed. "She's still not used to me being punctual." "None of us are," Eleanor admitted. "It's a nice change." James's smile faded slightly. "Do you still worry that I'll go back to being that man?" Elena hesitated. They had promised honesty above all else. "Sometimes," she admitted, "old fears don't disappear overnight." "I know," James said. "But I meant what I promised. You come first now, Elena, always." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I believe you." Later that afternoon, Elena visited Rachel for coffee. Her friend's apartment was chaotic, as always, with case files spread across the dining table. "I've been up all night preparing for this deposition," Rachel explained, clearing space for them to sit. "But I needed a break to hear your latest update. How are things with the new James?" Elena laughed. "That's actually a pretty accurate description. He's kept his promises, Rachel. He's home for dinner almost every night. We're talking about trying for a baby again." Rachel's eyebrows shot up. "Really? That's huge." "It feels right," Eleanor said. "For the first time in years, we're truly connected." "I'm happy for you," Rachel said sincerely. "Though I admit I was skeptical that this change would last once his memory returned." "Me too," Eleanor admitted. "But it's like the accident gave him perspective. He says nearly losing everything made him realize what really matters." "Speaking of his memory," Rachel said, "did he ever remember anything more about Sarah?" Elena's smile dimmed slightly. "He says there was never anything physical between them, but he admits he enjoyed her company and the attention she gave him during a time when things were strained between us." "And you believe him?" "I do," Eleanor said. "James has been completely transparent since his memory returned. He even transferred Sarah to the European division to avoid any awkwardness. Rachel looked impressed. That's a big step. The old James would never have disrupted business for personal reasons. That's what I thought too, Eleanor agreed. But he said our marriage was worth more than any business advantage. After leaving Rachel's, Eleanor drove to the supermarket to pick up ingredients for a special lunch she planned to make for James the next day. As she was selecting fresh pasta, she heard a familiar voice. "Elena, is that you?" She turned to see Sarah Davis standing there with a shopping basket. Eleanor hadn't seen her since James had arranged her transfer. "Sarah," Eleanor said, her stomach tightening, "I didn't know you were still in town." "Just tying up loose ends before I leave for London next week," Sarah explained. "James didn't mention we'd spoken?" Eleanor's radar went up immediately. "No, he didn't." Sarah looked surprised. "Oh, well, it was just a brief call about the transition. He's been very professional about everything." "That's good to hear," Elena said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Look, Elena," Sarah said, lowering her voice, "I know things were uncomfortable between us. I just want you to know that nothing inappropriate ever happened with James. I may have misread signals, but he never crossed any lines." Eleanor studied the woman's face, trying to determine if she was sincere. "Thank you for telling me that." "He's a good man," Sarah continued, "and he's clearly crazy about you. Whatever happened after his accident, it seems to have given him clarity about what matters." Elena nodded, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to dislike this woman, who had clearly harbored feelings for her husband, but another part recognized, "Thou the olive branch being extended, I wish you well in London," Eleanor said finally. Sarah smiled. "Thank you, and I wish you both happiness." As Elena drove home, her mind raced. Why hadn't James mentioned speaking with Sarah? Was it innocent, as Sarah suggested, or was there a reason he'd kept it from her? By the time she arrived home, Eleanor had worked herself into a state of anxiety. She found James in the kitchen preparing coffee. "You're home early," he said with a smile. "Want a cup?" "I ran into Sarah at the supermarket," Eleanor said without preamble. James's smile faltered slightly. "Oh? She mentioned you'd spoken recently." "You didn't tell me." James set down the coffee pot. "It was a brief business call about her transition to London. I didn't think it was worth mentioning. Even knowing how I feel about her, about your history." "Elena," James said, his voice gentle, "there was no history to speak of. And yes, perhaps I should have mentioned the call, but it was so insignificant that I didn't even think about it. The old James kept things from me all the time," Elena said quietly. "Little things that became big things, meetings that became late nights at the office, business trips that got extended." James crossed the kitchen and took her hands. "I'm not that man anymore. It was a 5-minute call about transferring files, nothing more." Eleanor wanted to believe him. Everything in the past 3 months told her she could trust him. Yet old fears died hard. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm overreacting." "No," James said, "your concerns are valid given our past. I should have mentioned the call even if it was trivial. No more secrets between us, even small ones." Elena nodded, leaning into his embrace. No more secrets. That evening at dinner with Elena's parents, James was charming and attentive. Elena's mother remarked several times how different he seemed. "You're actually listening when we talk," she teased him. The old James would be checking his phone under the table. "Mom," Elena warned. "It's okay," James said, smiling. "She's right. I was a terrible son-in-law before. I'm trying to make up for that now." "Well, we approve of the change," Elena's father said. "It's good to see our daughter happy again." On the drive home, Elena was quiet, thinking about her parents' observations. "They weren't wrong, were they?" James asked. "About how I was before?" "No," Elena admitted. "You were always polite but distant, like your mind was elsewhere." "It probably was," James said. "I can't believe how blind I was, Elena. I had everything, a beautiful wife, a successful career, a wonderful home, and I still wasn't satisfied. I kept chasing the next deal, the next acquisition, without appreciating what was right in front of me." "What changed?" Elena asked. "Besides the accident, I mean. You had your memory back for weeks now. Why is this time different?" James was quiet for a moment. I think losing my memory gave me the perspective I needed. When I woke up in that hospital bed, not knowing who you were, all I saw was a beautiful, kind woman who was clearly devoted to me. And as I got to know you again, I fell in love with you all over again, without the baggage, without the work distractions. He reached over and took her hand. And then when my memory returned, I had the unique experience of seeing our relationship from two different perspectives. I could remember being that workaholic who took you for granted, but I could also remember falling in love with you again during my recovery. The contrast was illuminating. And what if you hadn't lost your memory? Helena asked the question that had been haunting her. Would we still be drifting further apart? I'd like to think we would have found our way back to each other, James said. But honestly, I don't know. I was so caught up in work, so convinced that my success was what mattered most. It might have taken something even more drastic to wake me up. Elena squeezed his hand. I'm just grateful we got this second chance, whatever caused it. The next morning, James surprised Elena by bringing her breakfast in bed. What's the occasion? She asked, sitting up against the pillows. Do I need an occasion to spoil my wife? James sat beside her, stealing a piece of toast from her plate. No, but you usually have early meetings on Thursdays. I rescheduled, James said, because today is more important. Elena looked confused. What's today? 6 months since the accident, James explained. 6 months since I got the chance to fall in love with you all over again. Elena was touched that he had remembered. That deserves a celebration. I thought so too, James agreed. Which is why I've arranged for us to have the entire day together. No work, no interruptions. What did you have in mind? Elena asked. First, a visit to the art gallery where we first met, James said. Then lunch at that little Italian place. From our first date. And tonight a surprise. Elena's heart swelled. This thoughtfulness, this attention to the meaningful moments in their relationship, was something the old James had lost along the way. The day was everything James had promised. At the art gallery, they stood in the exact spot where they had first met 12 years earlier, when Elena was showcasing her work, and James had been immediately captivated by both her art and her smile. You were wearing a blue dress, James remembered, and you were trying to explain your painting technique to an elderly couple who clearly didn't understand modern art. Elena laughed. And you swooped in pretending to be an art expert, even though you knew nothing about painting techniques. I knew I wanted to know more about the artist, James said, kissing her softly. That much was true. At the Italian restaurant, they sat at the same corner table from their first date. The owner, Mario, remembered them and brought complimentary wine. To the happy couple, he toasted. You young people give an old man hope for romance. Elena smiled at James over her wine glass. If Mario only knew our whole story. It's quite the soap opera, isn't it? James agreed. Amnesia and all. After lunch, they walked in the park hand in hand, enjoying the spring sunshine. Elena couldn't remember the last time they had simply walked together with no purpose other than to enjoy each other's company. So what's this surprise for tonight? She asked as they sat on a bench watching children play. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, James teased. Not even a hint, James pretended to consider. It involves something you've wanted for a long time. Elena's mind raced with possibilities. That doesn't narrow it down much. Patience, James said, kissing her cheek. You'll find out soon enough. That evening, James asked Elena to wear the red dress he loved, while he donned a suit. He drove them to an unfamiliar part of town and parked in front of a Victorian-style house with a for sale sign out front. James? Elena questioned as he helped her from the car. What are we doing here? You're surprised, James said, leading her up the walkway. I've arranged a private viewing. A real estate agent met them at the door and gave them keys. Take your time, Mr. Carter. I'll be back in an hour. Once they were alone inside, Eleanor wandered through the spacious rooms. The house was beautiful. Hardwood, floors, large windows, a kitchen that opened to a sunroom overlooking a garden. It's stunning, Elena said, but I don't understand. We have a home. We have a mansion, James corrected. A showpiece that I bought to impress business associates and showcase my success. This is different. He led her to a room at the back of the house. A bright space with northern light streaming through skylights. "This would be your studio," he said. "Better than the converted bedroom you use now." Elena turned to him, realization dawning. "Are you saying you want to move to downsize?" James nodded. "The mansion never felt like a home, Elena. It was a status symbol. This place," he gestured around them, "this could be our home, a place to raise a family." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You're serious about this?" "Completely," James confirmed. "And there's more." He led her upstairs to a room painted in soft yellow. "This would be perfect for a nursery." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "James, I know we've been talking about trying for a baby again," he said, taking both her hands in his. "I want you to know I'm all in, Eleanor. I want a family. With you. I want to be a father who's present, who doesn't miss the important moments because he's stuck in a meeting." "What about Carter Industries?" Elena asked. "Running the company from a different neighborhood won't change the demands on your time." "That's why I've made some changes at work too," James said. "I've promoted Robert to co-CEO. He'll handle the day-to-day operations, international travel and after-hours emergencies. I'm stepping back to focus on strategy and big-picture decisions." Elena stared at him in shock. "You're giving up control of the company?" "I'm sharing leadership," James clarified. "I'm still CEO, but with a better balance. The board wasn't happy at first, but they came around when I explained my reasoning. Besides, the company has had its best quarter ever under my new approach." "Because you're happier," Elena said softly. "More focused when you are working." "Exactly," James agreed. "So what do you think? Could you see us living here, starting a family?" Elena looked around the room, imagining it filled with a crib, a rocking chair, toys scattered on the floor. Then she looked at James, this man who had lost himself once but found his way back to her. "Yes," she said. "This feels right." James pulled her into his arms. "There's one more surprise." "James, this is already too much." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring, not the enormous one he had given her when they got engaged, but a simpler, more elegant design. "What's this?" Elena asked, confused. "We're already married." "I know," James said, "but I want to renew our vows. Start fresh. The man who married you 12 years ago lost his way. I want to make new promises to you as the man I am now." Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. "You don't need to do that." "I want to," James insisted. "I want to stand before our friends and family and promise to be the husband you deserve, not just for now, but for the rest of our lives." Elena took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger above her wedding band. "Then my answer is yes, again." 6 weeks later, Eleanor stood in the garden of their new home, surrounded by flowers and twinkling lights. Their closest friends and family were gathered on white chairs, facing an arch of roses, where James waited with the minister. Rachel, serving as her matron of honor, adjusted Elena's simple white dress. "Are you ready?" Eleanor nodded, her heart full. "It's more than ready." As she walked toward James, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, from passionate young love to growing apart, from the accident that had wiped away their past to the painful but healing process of rebuilding their relationship. James's eyes never left hers as she approached. When she reached him, he took her hands, his smile radiant. "You are so beautiful," he whispered. The minister welcomed everyone and spoke briefly about second chances and renewed commitment before inviting James and Elena to share their vows. James went first, his voice strong and clear. "Elena, 7 months. Ergo, I woke up in a hospital bed not knowing who you were. As I got to know you again, I discovered the most amazing woman, kind, talented, patient, and loving. I fell in love with you all over again, and when my memory returned, I realized what a fool I had been to ever take you for granted." He squeezed her hands. "Today I make new promises to you. I promise to put our marriage first, above work, above success, above everything. I promise to be present not just in body, but in mind and heart. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, as you have supported mine. And I promise to love you more each day than the day before, for all the days of our lives." Elena's eyes shimmered with tears as she began her vows. "James, when you lost your memory, I thought I had lost you forever. Instead, I found you again, or rather, we found each other. These past months have taught me that true love isn't just about passion or romance. It's about choice. Every day we choose each other. We choose to listen, to forgive, to grow together." She took a deep breath. "I promise to choose you every day. I promise to remember this precious second chance we've been given. I promise to be your safe harbor and your greatest adventure. And I promise to love you, the man you were, the man you are, and the man you continue to become, for all the days of our lives." They exchanged rings, James's new wedding band and the renewal ring he had given Elena. As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, again, James pulled Elena into a kiss that felt like both a memory and a new beginning. At the reception, in their garden, James kept Elena close as they greeted guests and shared their first dance. Elena's parents beamed with approval, and even James's father, a stern man who had pushed James toward business success above all else, seemed moved by the change in his son. "You look happy, son," he told James. "Truly happy. Your mother would be proud." "I am happy, Dad," James agreed, his arm around Elena's waist. "I finally got my priorities straight." Later, as the party continued around them, James led Elena to a quiet corner of the garden. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a small gift box. Inside was a silver charm bracelet with only one charm, a tiny car. Elena looked at him questioningly. "Strange gift, I know," James said. "But hear me out. That accident was both the worst and best thing that ever happened to us. It nearly took my life, but it saved our marriage." He touched the car charm gently. "This is to remind us both that sometimes life's worst moments can lead to unexpected blessings. I'll add a new charm each year on our anniversary, little symbols of our journey together." Elena fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It's perfect, unusual but meaningful, just like our story." "Speaking of our story," James said, "there might be a new chapter soon." He placed his hand gently on her stomach. "Have you thought about when we might start trying for that baby?" Eleanor covered his hand with hers, her eyes sparkling with a secret. "Actually, we may have already succeeded." James's eyes widened. "Are you saying—" "It's very early," Elena cautioned. "I only took the test this morning, but yes, I think we're going to be parents." James let out a whoop of joy and lifted Eleanor off her feet, spinning her around. Nearby guests turned to stare, but James didn't care. He set Eleanor down gently and kissed her. "Sorry," he said. "Probably shouldn't spin the pregnant lady." Eleanor laughed. "Probably not." James placed his hand reverently on her still flat stomach. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Eleanor asked, watching his face. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," James said. Ecstatic, terrified, grateful, all of the above. Eleanor laid her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Me too." As the sun set over their garden, casting golden light over their gathered loved ones, Elena thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them to this moment. James's accident had been traumatic and frightening, but it had also been a gift, a chance to start over, to remember what truly mattered. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, his arms wrapped around her as they swayed gently to the music. "About how sometimes you have to lose something to appreciate it," Elena said. "You lost your memory, but we found each other again." "We found something better," James corrected. "A stronger love, a deeper commitment." As night fell and stars appeared above them, Elena knew he was right. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would still be challenges ahead. James would have demanding days at work. The baby would bring new stresses and adjustments. Life would happen with all its complications. But Elena was no longer afraid. She and James had weathered a storm that should have torn them apart and had emerged stronger. They had been given a rare gift, the chance to see each other with fresh eyes, to fall in love all over again, and to build a marriage on a foundation of renewed appreciation and commitment. As James led her back to the dance floor for one last dance, their friends and family surrounding them with love and support, Elena felt a certainty deep in her soul. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, not as the distant couple they had become, but as true partners who had found each other again after being forgotten by fate, but found by love. Some might call it luck or coincidence that James's accident had happened just when their marriage needed saving the most. But Elena preferred to think of it as destiny, a reminder that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beautiful new beginning. James held her close as they danced under the stars, his whispered, "I love you," a promise that felt more real than any she had ever known. In his eyes, Elena saw their future, a life rebuilt, a love renewed, and endless possibilities ahead. And in that moment, she knew that they would be okay. More than okay. They would be extraordinary, together.